US President Donald Trump is issuing fresh warnings to Iran as the conflict enters its second week. Israel is standing by its ally while launching strikes at several facilities in Iran.
On the morning of February 28, 2026, people in Tehran woke up to explosions. Not a drill, not a warning, strikes. Within hours, smoke was rising over the capital, reports coming in from cities across Iran: Isfahan, Shiraz, Manab, Kermanshah. The internet went dark, flights were grounded, hospitals began filling. By the end of the first day, the Iranian Red Crescent, the primary civilian reporting body in a country where internet access has been largely shut down, reported over 200 civilians dead and nearly 750 injured. And the strikes were still coming. Now, let me preface that this is not a video about who is right and who's wrong. Geopolitical arguments are being made by governments, legal scholars, and international bodies, and those arguments do matter. But before any of that conversation can happen honestly, something else needs to be documented. The people who did not choose this. The people who were simply there. In a hospital in Tehran, on the first day of this operation, a woman was photographed sitting in a hallway holding a child's shoe. One shoe. The child had already been taken into surgery, and the hallway was full. That sole image circulated on Iranian social media before the internet was shut down. It's one of the last images to come out of Tehran in real time. It's not the first time, though, that Iranian civilians have been in this position. In June of 2025, Israel launched what became known as the 12-Day War, a surprise operation targeting Iran's nuclear program and missile infrastructure. Over 12 days, Israeli strikes killed an estimated 1,190 people inside Iran, including 436 confirmed civilians. Iran retaliated with roughly 550 ballistic missiles and 1,000 drones. 28 people were killed in Israel. The United States ended up joining on June 22nd, striking Iran's nuclear facilities at Natanz, Fordo, and Isfahan with bunker buster bombs only the US military possessed. A ceasefire, though, was brokered on June 24th. Iran's nuclear program had been damaged, not destroyed. Iran was rebuilding. The ceasefire held uneasily. Tensions didn't dissipate, they simply accumulated. And on February 28, 2026, 8 months later, it began again. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched a coordinated joint military operation against Iran. Israel named it Operation Roaring Lion. The US Department of Defense called it Operation Epic Fury. The publicly stated objectives included targeting Iran's nuclear program, its ballistic missile capabilities, and its military leadership. US officials have described the operation's goals as including the removal of the current Iranian government. Israel's Air Force dropped more than 1,200 munitions across 24 of Iran's 31 provinces in a single day. US forces have struck more than 3,000 targets in Iran since the operation began. The scale is significant. These aren't precision strikes on isolated facilities. They have hit across 131 countries inside Iran, according to the Iranian Red Crescent, a country of 90 million people. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, was killed in the strikes on the first day. Iran has since named Mojtaba Khamenei, his son, as the country's new supreme leader. Iran responded with waves of missiles and drones, targeting Israeli, US military bases across the region, and civilian infrastructure in Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Jordan, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq. An Iranian drone struck a runway at a UK military base in Cyprus. As of day 10, this conflict still is not contained. It's still escalating. On the first day of strikes, a missile hit a girls' elementary school in the city of Manab in southeastern Iran. Hossein Karmanpour, head of public relations at Iran's Ministry of Health, confirmed that approximately 180 children were killed. 180 children did not go home from school that day. International human rights laws, the laws of war, requires that all parties distinguish between military targets and civilian ones. It requires proportionality. It requires precaution. Those standards exist precisely because of moments like this. The circumstances of the Manab strike remain under dispute. Whether the school was near a military target, whether the strike was deliberate, or a result of a targeting error, none of this has been independently confirmed at the time of this recording. That investigation, though, does need to happen, and the questions it raises are serious, but the outcome is not in dispute. How this strike will be investigated and by whom remains an open question. Manab is the single deadliest incident targeting civilians in this conflict so far, and it's not the only one. As of March 9th, at least 1,255 people have been killed inside Iran, according to the Iranian Red Crescent Society. Independent monitoring organizations placed the figure even higher, with internet access largely shut down and independent journalists unable to operate freely. The true toll is almost certainly higher than what has been confirmed. The Iranian Red Crescent has reported that approximately 10,000 civilian structures across the country have been damaged, including homes, schools, and nearly 36 health facilities. In Tehran, 20 people were killed in Nilufar Square, a public square. The Gandhi Hospital was struck. Oil storage facilities were hit overnight, sending smoke so thick that, according to witnesses, it looked as if the sun had not risen. The Iranian Red Crescent warned residents to take precautions against toxic air pollution and the risk of acid rain. In the city of Sanandaj, residential buildings were destroyed and densely populated neighborhoods hit. In Fars province, at least 35 people were killed in a single morning. Iran's retaliatory strikes have also killed civilians. An Iranian ballistic missile struck the city of Beit Shemesh in central Israel on March 1st. 9 people were killed and more than 20 injured. One resident, interviewed by Israeli media, described carrying her children down a stairwell in the dark after the building's power was cut, not knowing whether the structure above them was still intact. In the Tel Aviv area, one woman was killed by falling shrapnel from an intercepted missile. A 9-story residential building in northern Israel was struck, injuring one person. Hezbollah entered the conflict on March 2nd, firing on northern Israel. Israel expanded its strikes into Lebanon in response. The conflict has now killed more than 400 people in Lebanon. The Israeli military reports that Iran has launched hundreds of ballistic missiles and drones. Most have been intercepted. The ones that weren't, though, have landed in neighborhoods, apartment buildings, and populated areas. For Israeli civilians, the past 10 days have meant shelter protocols, suspended schools, canceled flights, and the particular terror of sirens with no clear end in sight. As of March 9th, at least 13 people have been killed in Israel, the vast majority of them civilians. The conflict has not stayed within Iran and Israel, however. Iranian strikes have targeted infrastructure and civilian sites across Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, the UAE, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq. In Saudi Arabia, 2 people, both foreign workers, were killed when a military projectile hit a residential area. The UAE has also reported 3 people killed by missile debris. 8 U.S. service members have been killed, 4 are confirmed dead in the Gulf region alone. Iran has also attempted to blockade the Strait of Hormuz, targeting vessels and causing at least 2 maritime fatalities. In Bahrain, a desalination plant vital to drinking water was struck. Qatar has suspended all public gatherings for Ramadan. Schools across several countries have moved to remote learning. Dubai International Airport had 70% of its flights canceled, more than 1,500 flights grounded in a single day. Iran's blockade attempt at the Strait of Hormuz has driven oil prices to nearly $120 a barrel. Qatar's energy minister has warned that if the conflict continues, Gulf producers may be forced to halt exports entirely, a scenario that would raise fuel and food costs for hundreds of millions of people far from the conflict zone. The UN estimates at least 330,000 people have been forcibly displaced across the Middle East. The European Union has called for maximum restraint and the protection of civilians, emphasizing full respect for international law and international humanitarian law. Switzerland stated that it believes the U.S.-Israeli strikes constitute a violation of international law. Switzerland's defense minister said both the U.S. and Israel, as well as Iran for its counterattacks, broke international law's prohibition on the use of force. China and Russia have been in direct contact, with both nations expressing concern over the escalation. Pope Leo XIV called for an end to the violence, urging that the roar of bombs in the Middle East cease. In the United States, both the Senate and the House of Representatives voted on war powers resolutions aimed at halting the conflict, and both failed. The operation continues with congressional backing, though the legal debate remains active. The trajectory of this conflict, whether a ceasefire will be brokered, whether it will expand further, is unknown. It is important to be honest, though, about the limits of what can be verified right now. Iran's internet blackout makes independent reporting extremely difficult. Casualty figures are coming primarily from the Iranian Red Crescent, the Iranian Ministry of Health, and networks of local volunteers. The figures cited in this video should be understood as a floor, not a ceiling. The actual toll is almost certainly higher. The circumstances of specific strikes, including Manab, have not been independently investigated. The full scope of damage to civilian infrastructure, hospitals, water systems, and residential areas is not yet known. In conflict zones, verified information arrives slowly. What responsible documentation requires is acknowledging that gap, while not allowing it to obscure what has already been confirmed. 180 children killed in a school in Manab. Over 1,250 people killed in Iran in 10 days. A region-wide conflict now affecting at least 12 countries. These are confirmed facts. Geopolitical conflicts are always framed in terms of strategy, objectives met, targets neutralized, strategic assets degraded. The language of military operations is clinical by design. But on the morning of February 28th in the city of Manab, a teacher marked attendance for a class of girls who would not be marked present again. We don't yet know how this ends. We don't yet know the full death toll. We don't yet know how the investigations into civilian casualties will unfold, or whether they will. We'll continue to update this as the situation develops. If you want to understand the broader context of how this conflict began, we've linked our coverage of the June 2025 12-day war down in the description below.